Our topic of discussion this evening is on cancer, and I would like you to take your notes on this because if I were to give you a handout, it's pretty extensive. And for those who have the book, the 365 book, you will get notes in there on cancer. And then we also had another book on breast cancer for those who were interested in that. So general cancer, just to give you an overview about what is cancer and how it is initiated and progressed and what we can do to prevent. And if you do have it, what are some of the healthy foods that you can have to treat the body? Cancer, it is a disease and it's quite prevalent in our societies today around the world. And so in the book of Exodus 15:26, it says, "If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do all that which is right in his sight, and wilt give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee." So the Egyptians had some diseases that the Lord promised he will not allow it to befall his chosen people. What were some of those diseases? Polio, influenza, smallpox, parasites, nutritional deficiencies, eye infection, arthritis, cancer. Very much the same diseases around us today. Nothing has changed. So, promise of Exodus 15:26, is that promise extended to you? Amen. Okay, so it is extended to all of us. Though you're not living in the wilderness, but we're still out here in this wilderness on earth. And so as we make our way to the promised land, God is still taking care of his people today. And so he promises to bring healing to us. So among those, you find the common denominator was all in the diet and the lifestyle. Sickness, suffering, and death are works of an antagonistic power. Who is the destroyer? Satan is the destroyer, and God is the restorer. He's in the healing business. So disease never comes without a cause. All right. And let me hear, for all that you've been listening to for the past 2 weeks, let's say this together. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions. And what are the laws of health? They are Amen. And so the leading causes of death in the UK, I went and I pulled out the 10 top cancers that we have right here. And number 1 is lung cancer. A lot of smokers on the road, on the streets, in the environment, but this affects not only the one who's holding the cigar, but also this one who's standing nearby or who relate with them. You have second-hand smoke, you have third-hand smoking. Lung cancer, number 1, and it's ranked 18 among other world countries for those who are reporting in. And then followed by breast cancer and prostate cancer that would affect a lot of our men or women. And you have colon, rectum, esophagus, pancreas cancer, lymphoma, ovarian cancer, bladder, and stomach cancer. So cancer affects a variety of people. And so we have a lot of women, and the women are pretty much active when you talk about cancer. You hear breast cancer, but you don't really see the men out marching and talking about this, but it affects them nonetheless. I have a few pictures to show you what cancer looks like on a body once it starts to overtake the body. So here we go. This is one on the breast, and you see it's affecting the lymph nodes under the arm, and that's one that's been cut off, and that's one there. These are real people. I'll praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And the Lord has made our bodies in a miraculous way, and the body can take a lot, but at some point you find that breakdown can take place. God wants to restore us and to renew us. One day we would be whole, where there would be no more sickness and disease around us and in our environment. But for the time being, we do all what we can do in order to preserve our health. And this is what the Lord wants for us. Now, when it comes to cancers and to cells in general, our cells would multiply, and that's each cell would make a copy of itself before it dies. So there's a time frame for our cells to live and to die, but before it dies, it needs to make a copy of itself. And so there's a process in which that takes place, and then the previous one would go off the scene. But in each cell, there is a DNA, and that gives recognition to the cell. It's actually, the DNA is so sophisticated that it is termed the language of God that's written in each cell in our body. And Adam knew about all of them. In fact, we're told that he knew even about the cells on the leaf and the flowers, and he can look at them and know a whole lot of the history about a particular leaf. And so in our bodies, it's all written in codes. That DNA is written in codes. 6 million, each cell has 6 million letter codes of DNA. And if you were to count each of those letters, it would take you years to do so. And so that DNA, it actually makes up the color of your eye, your hair type. The function of each cell has its own identity within each of them. So the lung cells know it is a lung cell. It would replicate itself to be a lung cell. The hair cell, the head, the brain cells, your toenail cells, everything, they know what they're supposed to be, and it's because all that 6 million letter codes is rewritten in there. And so in plants it occurs, and animals it occurs as well. But the thing about it, with these letter codes, tell me, how many of you think you're good at handwriting? Okay, all right. And how many are good on the keyboard? Okay. Could you close your eyes and type a word? Okay, great. Could you close your eyes and type that word repeatedly, like 6 million times? The problem is with our cells, as it replicates itself, if perchance something goes wrong in the cell, it would make a copy, but it's not just like the original copy. For example, we've been doing a lot of photocopying here of material, and say I gave Sister Lauren one, and she wants to make a copy for her friend, and she takes that and she makes a copy, and then the friend takes that copy and make another copy, and the friend, that one takes that copy. Soon enough, you find that the quality down the road will not be like this original one. And so that is what happens when the cell has to replicate itself. There can be mistakes in it. And if there is a mistake in it, that gets replicated. Mistake plus any other mistake that it makes. And so we're going to share with you what could actually cause those mistakes in the cell, that it wouldn't replicate itself perfectly. And so let's see. Cancer. What exactly is cancer? There's a definition from the Merck manual, and it says, it is a proliferation of cell whose unique trait, loss of normal controls, results in an unregulated growth, lack of differentiation, local tissue invasion, and metastasis, meaning it spreads. So it actually makes a copy of itself, but its unique trait is actually lost, so it loses its normal control. The growth is rapid and unregulated. It doesn't know itself. It lacks differentiation. It's a local tissue that can become invaded by the cancer cells, and then it can spread. So that's the Merck manual. But what now? So you see that this is, say, for example, a normal cell structure, about 3 of them together. With cancer, look, the edges are different. It's abnormal. And even the nucleus within the cell, there is abnormality in the cancer cell. One of the things is that with cancer cells, I like to ascribe it to be like wild grass. You know, you have your garden, you're taking care of it, you're planting your lettuce and your peas trees and your little flowers and whatever you have in your garden, but ever so often you have to go and pull out weeds. And the weeds, if you don't attend to the garden for a while, you come back, the weeds grow up bigger than your crop. And so, you know, with cancer cells, they multiply rapidly more than a tree plant, one that you could eat, or your flowers. So according to Counsels on Diets and Foods, we're told that cancer is as simple as that, cancer is a germ. And there is where you start off. Now, for a germ, there are like 4 different types: virus, bacteria, fungus, and protozoa. And if you were to drill into each of these, let's see what we can find. So about 16% of cancers around the world have been estimated to be caused by microbes. And several cancers in the liver and GI tract are clearly identified as being microbe-related. So you have microbes and like parasites and so forth. But then, say, for example, you have viruses. And then you know all these different viruses. You have Ebola, Zika, liver. You know, hepatitis B is linked to liver cancer. And human herpes virus 8 is linked to Kaposi sarcoma. Human papilloma virus is linked to cervical cancer. So you see correlation between virus and a link to specific kinds of cancers. Then you also have hepatitis C linked to liver cancer, and human T lymphotrophic virus, it's linked to T-cell leukemia, and the HIV virus, it's also linked to Kaposi sarcoma, lymphoma, liver, and lung cancer. Virus, cancer. So let's take a look at bacteria. So you have a lot of bacteria growing about in the body and on the skin. And so you have bacteria, so for example, H. pylori is linked to stomach cancer. If you don't take care of it in adequate time, it can develop into stomach cancer. Then you have fungus, and such as aflatoxins, where you can find in moldy peanuts, moldy corn, cheese rind, moldy rotten apples, and there you can link that to lung cancer. Candida albicans, it's also a fungus, and where you have an overgrowth of bad bacteria, and it is linked to, it disrupts the cells leading to cancer. It can also increase parasites when you have Candida albicans. And here you have parasites that you can get if it is that you use water that is contaminated. You can have parasites. And so you can get flukes, which is a parasite, and that can find itself giving you cancer within the bile ducts. So generally, we were able to pull out a couple of the various kinds of cancers, linking it to bacteria. Now, the point is that you will find, number one, your cells, your DNA, first needs to replicate itself in a way where it is not normal. And then once that happens, that cell is open to initiation where some virus can come to it, opening the door for sickness and disease to set in. Then you have the abnormal growth of those cancer cells, and tumor can take place, and then it can spread. So areas where we can actually get those normal cells damaged is through air pollution or water pollution or soil contamination with pesticides, or the animals that are being fed hormones and antibiotics and their dung fall on the ground. It gets into our water stream and it can affect us. So in the environment, radiation is also a threat. Chemicals, or even internally, your hormones can be imbalanced. Immune impairment with your immune system, and then you can also inherit mutations. So there's 7 warning signs of cancer that we can look for. If you find that there is change in your bowel and bladder habits, if you think that you see an unusual bleeding or discharge, don't just dismiss it. Get checked out and find out what is the cause early. Then if you have a sore that's not healing and it's there month after month, go and get that checked out. If you feel some thickening or lump on the breast or elsewhere, then you need to go to your doctor and find out what is causing that. Especially when it comes to the breast, women need to examine themselves every month around the menstrual cycle period time. And as you feel, there are ways in which you can feel the breast, then feel under the arm. If you feel any lump growth or some, you may not even feel a seed-like structure. It may just be like a tough part and you recognize, a couple weeks and it's still there. You go and have it checked out. Especially lots of these cancers they form, but they tend to lodge themselves in the breast when it is dense. So you have the breast density that puts you at risk for the breast cancer because the germ can be in there and you wouldn't recognize. And you can do a mammogram, but it wouldn't pick it up until you do like an ultrasound, and then it can pick it up. So any abnormality, and if we were doing breast cancer, we tell you even a little further, sometimes you might see like an indentation on the breast, or the nipple might be, have some substance that's coming out of it. It may not be gooey, it might be white, and you might think, a little milk, or it might just be some crust. And don't dismiss it, have it checked out. Then you have indigestion or difficulty in swallowing. Obvious change in a wart or in a mold. Go and check that out. Or if you have a nagging cough or hoarseness, go and have a check. Make sure it's not cancer forming. And so initiation. Once the cell is, what you can have that can actually damage a cell. One of the main culprits is free radicals. Free radicals is actually like an oxygen molecule that has gone bad in the body. So the oxygen molecule, it needs to be balanced, and there are like little electrodes on the 4 corner points to balance it. But I'll show you what can cause damage to those cells that makes them a free radical is when one of those electrons actually fall away. Then now they don't have 4 points to keep them balanced, they have 3, and so they start bouncing about all in the body, looking for a partner who may be missing all 3 and just have 1. They say, come, let's hook up, and we are complete. But I'll show you. So you see like these oxygen electrons around here. This one is missing one in the end, yeah, and then it makes it a free radical. So you always hear the term about using more antioxidants to prevent free radicals. But what can cause these oxygen cells to go bad, these oxygen molecules to go bad? Medication can cause it, the drug medication, certain of them specifically targeting. Then radiation can cause metabolic processes, food additives, physical stress in the body. So don't be stressed out. You can cause yourself to be at risk for an emotional stress. Then you also have smoking, smog, where you have a lot of pollution. Overeating affects your liver. Overeating can cause damage to your cell structure. So there's moderation in everything. And high fat in the diet, excessive exercise. So exercise, again, temperance, can be good, exercise good, but when we over-exercise, you lose and you actually drain the body of its proper functions. Trauma, injury, inflammation can affect you. Too much ultraviolet light, excessive radiation, high blood sugar or diabetes, aging, chronic diseases. And then you have antioxidant that you would need to get back into your body to cause that balance to be back on again. So then from the damage to the cell, now you can find what will actually promote it. If you're using, say, omega-6 fatty acids from corn flour or safflower oil, that can promote it. And this too is also linked for more skin cancers. That's why choose your oil wisely. Olive oil you can use, coconut oil you can use, but let's stay away from these. And corn oil will actually be genetically modified unless it says it is organic. So what could also, once you have the cell damage, what can promote cancer growth? You find excessive estrogen in the body, especially for women when they get into menopause state and they go for hormone replacement therapy. You increase your risk for getting breast cancer. You increase your risk for getting even ovarian cancer because of the excessive estrogen within the body. So for our females, how do we keep our hormones balanced? By adding more natural items to the body. Then the diet can also affect. If you have a diet that's high in fat, it is animal fat, not the plant-based fat like your avocados or your nuts and your seeds and so forth, but animal fat. It's linked to each of these cancers: stomach, esophagus, breast, prostate, skin, colon, colorectal, ovary, womb, lymphoma, all of these linked to animal foods, animal fats. Now, here we have the pictures, just if you wanted to imagine them. Animal fat again, all within there. Nice fish, but we talk about the fish. I have nothing else to eat, but I have a little fish now and again. I think it doesn't make sense to dirty your mouth with a little piece of fish now and again and get the disease, have the diseases. Let's leave them all together. Margarine, women who ate margarine experienced more breast cancer in a study done in Greece. Those who ate most animal fat tend to have the highest breast cancer risk. US, Canada, Australia, Sweden, and Germany could say so. However, for fat intake, women who use more olive oil had a 25% decreased risk of getting breast cancer. Okay, so dietary fat plays an important role. Councils on Diets and Foods, page 383, actually had something to say about animal fat. It says, those who use flesh meat disregard all the warnings that God has given concerning this question. And they have no evidence that they are walking in safe paths. They have not the slightest excuse for eating the flesh of dead animals. God's curse is resting upon the animal creation. I actually read this statement yesterday and thought that I would use it to end tonight's presentation, but it's here. And maybe for a reason, it's in the middle of this presentation as we go forward. And I think we should reflect a little bit more. It is actually saying that those who use flesh meat still disregard all the warnings that God has given concerning this question. And you'd see some other statements coming after this. But if it is that you're here tonight, you have listened to us for the past 2 weeks, and you're not motivated that you should leave the chicken alone, leave the tuna, the sardine, the smoked herring, the saltfish, leave out the fish and the turkey, leave out the butter, cheese, eggs, ice cream, milk, anything made from animal fat. If you're not convinced yet, please continue to listen on. But I think, ask yourself the question, honestly, are you disregarding God's warning that he's given concerning these items? You have no excuse that you are walking in safe paths. You have not the slightest excuse for eating the flesh of dead animals. There's so much food that we have today that we can eat. What excuse do you have for holding on to the flesh foods? Because the next sentence says that God's curse is on the animal kingdom. And so the animals today, they are sick. They are polluted. They are laden with hormones. They are laden with antibiotics. You eat them, it passes on to you, the eater. And so you're getting, what are we eating the meat for? Just for taste and gratification of our appetite? If you want to use it for protein, the plant-based kingdom have loads more protein. Soybean is the #1 source of protein on the face of the earth. And there are other beans. Chana is excellent in protein, iron, folates, and lentils just the same. And they're readily available for us. And if it is that you think, well, you wouldn't be strong enough, those have iron. It will give you strength. What is the biggest land animal? The elephant. Okay? Does the elephant eat meat? No? And so the elephant it's a vegetarian. All right? And it sustains well, carries its body along, and God can take care of you too. The curse is on the animal kingdom. It's going to pass on to you, the eater. And it's going to get worse. If you think it's bad today, it's going to get worse. So many times the meat is eaten, it actually decays in the stomach. It takes like about 3 days along your colon before it gets out. Meanwhile, it's rotting in your colon. What again? Your blood that's taken up from your small intestines. You think for a day your body would say, you had meat today, you know you shouldn't have it. That adds stop feeding the blood? No. It happens like clockwork. And so your blood is taking it up. It makes your blood impure. All the diseases from that flesh food, taking its lingering time along your colon, your small intestines, then your colon, it gets filtered into your blood all over your body. It would increase inflammation. It would increase cancers, tumors, and pulmonary diseases, lung conditions, respiratory situation, all because of eating meat. And cancers, tumors, and all inflammatory diseases are largely caused by eating meat. If you're eating the meat, you have arthritis, stop eating the flesh food and their byproducts. They increase arachidonic acid in the body, and that increases inflammation. You're going to have the pains. You're going to have the inflammation in the body. And so from the light God has given me, the prevalence of cancer and tumors is largely due to gross living on dead flesh. Eating meat increases colon cancer. If you are lacto-ovo, meaning you're still having the byproducts, the dairy, you have 15.9 risk of getting cancer. And if you use meat 1 to 3 times a week, 18% risk. And if you use the flesh foods 4+ or more times per week, you have a 26.4% risk of getting colon cancer. When it comes to cheese, so you're not using the flesh, but what about the cheese? A French study of 2,969 persons showed that individuals consuming cheese, all kinds of cheese, had a 20% increase in risk of breast cancer compared to those who never used it. Daily consumers had 50% increase in risk compared to those who never used it. So if you're using it daily, there was a 50% risk of getting breast cancer. Cheese should never be introduced into the stomach, so let's leave it alone. When it comes to molds aflatoxin, they can actually cause cause cancers on a whole. Moldy peanuts. If you're eating peanuts and you taste any bad, spit it out. Don't say it's in my mouth already, I'm going to swallow it. It can give you cancer. At one time, in the Philippines, they were doing a study, and the people there were so deficient in protein that they thought, let's get them planting peanuts, and they would be able to harvest that and get their protein. And as they did that, you found that how they took care of it wasn't healthy. And so they were able, peanuts, the nuts, the ground nuts, it actually grew mold on it. Aflatoxin came about, and lots of people died because they were eating it. So no moldy corn, cheese, moldy cheese. You know cheese is a mold. So I don't know how more moldy cheese can get. So cheese is a mold. So when you see the little blue stuff on it, that's just part of life. Put it in your bread and continue eating it. Don't cut it off and throw it away. That's money going down the drain, right? So moldy cheese, but it's cancer. So leave it all alone entirely. Moldy apples in any form. And I think how you make, like apple cider vinegar, you do need to let that apple rot. So be careful, watch that. And apart from that, we shouldn't be using apple cider vinegar. Tell them that the time will soon come when there will be no safety in using eggs, milk, cream, or butter because disease in animals is increasing. Some people like to say, well, I only use the white part of the egg. Okay? Now, think with me a little bit. The white part of the egg, it is there to protect that yolk, the unborn chicken. Yeah? And so if it's there to protect the unborn chicken, all that comes to that egg, that white acts as a protector, a buffer. That eggshell has like about 5,000 holes in it. It is porous. And if you were to boil the egg and drop it into some coloring water and leave it there soaking, you can still chip off the shell, and then you get colored eggs, and it looks pretty. So when the egg is in the chicken, all that is within the external environment of that egg gets absorbed into where? Into the white. So the hormones, the antibiotics, and whatever that they're feeding them with, it's going to get there into that white. When you eat it, you're still getting all that it was buffering to keep that and protect that unborn chicken. And so let's not take comfort in saying that we're using the eggs. Plus two, there's only one passageway for the chicken. So when you see the little brown spot in it, don't think it is an added piece of shell that you go flicking off. Okay, don't say it out loud. It's secret. You alone know what's on that eggshell, okay? All right, so healthy chickens or turkey and their eggs for human consumption are commonly infected with viruses which cause cancer in them. And some of these viruses can infect and transform human cells in vitro, and human blood shows evidence of infection with these viruses. This is a piece of beef. tumor, what do you think the butcher would do? Wash it out, clean it out, cut off near there, serve it, package it nice, and then it's purchased. Eating pork has produced scrofula, leprosy, and cancerous humors. And when it comes to the meat, you find that a lot of times folks like to barbecue their meat. And so you have heterocyclic amines that's formed when you fry the meat, and when you grill the meat, you actually have polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that forms because as the juice from the meat falls onto the coals, it bounces back up and contaminates that meat, and then you're eating it. So if meat eating were ever helpful, it is not safe now. All these diseases can come. And so when you grill that, 2 pounds of the benzoferine on the surface of 2 pounds of charred broiled steak is equivalent to 600 cigarettes that's being smoked. And so when you eat it, that's what's coming to the body. Hence the reason you could get the cancers forming. So you don't need to be smoking the cigarette, but in fact it has like 4,000 different chemicals in one stick of cigarette. You wouldn't think of putting paint down your system, ammonia, and battery, and all of those chemicals. But when the smoker stands next to you or you pass them on the street and you keep inhaling, that is what you're getting. Healthy lung, cancer smoker, lung. It passes on to children. If fathers smoke more than 10 cigarettes a day, they increase the risk of childhood cancer malignancy by 31%. And if they do 20 or more cigarettes per day and in the child's environment, that childhood cancer is increased by 42%. So there's secondhand smoke, and there's third-hand smoke when the smoking is within the environment, but the fumes fall on the furniture, and then you go and you touch it, you hold the hand doors, you shake the person's hand, it will pass on to you. If you do exposed to the cigarette, there are huge range of cancers that could attack all over the body: liver, stomach, pancreas, bowel, ovary, uterus, kidney, etc. Alcohol also increases the risk of breast cancer. By 60% of breast cancer is caused by the use of beer, wine, spirits, liquor, cocktails, and vinegar. Oh, and by the way, if the essence that you're using has vodka in it and then the flavorings, you're also increasing your risk for this. Alcohol will give mouth cancer, throat, breast, the liver, pancreas, the bowel cancers. Coffee increases the risk of cancer. It damages the DNA and prevents DNA differentiation. So coffee, caffeine, energy drinks, the cocoa and the chocolate is same family with coffee, and that damages the DNA in your cells that can be damaged and expose you to the risk of getting cancer. Coffee, chocolate linked to bladder, breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovary, pancreatic cancer, colon, and kidney. So right away, these are foods we kept talking about all the time as what we shouldn't be using, but it has a connection to cancer.
Yes, I would like to know, because the coffee grows in a tree. How does the caffeine get into it?
It's in the bean. It's in the bean itself, in the coffee bean.
Well, it's really and truly puzzling me, because God created that on the tree. It's not been contaminated by man. Now, you can understand the cigarette. They injected caffeine and other things in the cigarette, but that the cocoa, it is God plantation.
True. And not everything that you see in nature is meant for human consumption. And like you give a dog avocado, it could kill that dog. We eat it, we're humans. You find too, that the enemy has planted seeds. I'm not saying it's the coffee, but there are other trees and herbs in the field out there that the enemy has planted. You call them noxious plants. And we have the quotation somewhere, it came up in our class setting, but there are plants out there that are not of God, that the enemy has planted there. But within the bean itself of the coffee, the caffeine substance is in there. It's also family to theobromine that is within the cocoa bean, and that's in there. And it's also family to tobacco, nicotine. So they are linked together. So again, nicotine, that tobacco plant is a plant, and we don't use it for the same reason.
The same can be said for tea. The same can be said for tea, because when they pick the tea, hand-pick the tea, they pick the tea because when the plant realizes that it's being picked, it releases its toxins, and they pick it when the toxin is the highest in the tea, and then that's how they make the tea have its bitter taste.
Yeah. And so the aroma that comes out from the first set of pickings passes on in the air, and the other plants that you haven't even picked yet in the tea plants, they release their toxin. Good point. And that's the bitter taste, and then we go adding sweetener to it. But they're not items to be used. So these things, cross them out of your shopping list. They need to come out. Asbestos, wood dust, sugar, genetic powder. Females, these things can have talc in them. Don't use them. Just keep your body clean inside, and every other area of your body will be clean. Obesity increases the risk for breast cancer. Once the cell is damaged, you have all those things that hit the body. You find that tumors can form, and then it begins to grow. What could you do? All the things that cause, you need to remove them from the diet. Let's protect our DNA with using rich foods and antioxidant, using garlic, using foods of the cruciferous family. We've talked about the cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. Those foods are quite helpful for reversing cancer and for preventing cancer. Let's make sure we get them within our diet. Remember, these foods are also goitrogenic in nature. They are coarse. We need to how do we prepare them? Steam them until they're tender in order to get nutrients. And in addition to, they release certain compounds that is helpful for reducing cancer. Ferulic acid, for example, as well as indole are two elements that helps in reversing and preventing cancer.
Some people sprout. Is that something that needs to be cooked as well, or sprouting can be eaten as is, raw?
Yeah, so sprouting can be eaten raw in its raw state, yeah. Those are small little things, and even if you sprouted broccoli, it's not coarse. That's what we're looking at here too. And then it's little amounts. You're not going to be having large amounts. But then another thing too is that we make sure we get iodine back in our diet. So you can use kelp, or you use seaweed vegetables, Chlorella spirulina, you add those back in the diet. So to help the cell repair itself, the foods, let's look at the foods. For men with prostate cancer, watermelon is helpful. Watermelon seed that you can take and make a tea with it, or you can eat it. And then you also have like pistachio nuts is great for the men to protect their prostate. Pumpkin seeds is also helpful to protect your prostate. I do have a handout on prostate inflammation, and to the back sheet have prostate cancer. What are some of the teas that you can use if you had prostate cancer, and how you can treat that. But for further information, you can also see us. So all these foods, lots of the foods that you have readily available are great in antioxidants. Omega-3 using flaxseed is excellent for omega-3 fatty acids. And the red grapes has resveratrol, and that's quite helpful in being a COX-2 inhibitor to prevent the growth of tumors. Turmeric is excellent to prevent the growth of tumors or even to shrink tumor growth. Turmeric, and that's the root, or you can have the powder. And if it's the root, you use like 4 inches of it. If it is the powder, you use 2 tablespoons of it. Okay. Yeah. How you prepare the turmeric? Listen good. Because it comes from root, hard parts of a plant, you need to boil them. So you're looking at the seed, the root, the bark, hard parts of a plant we will boil. So first bring the water to a boil, and we would say like about 4.5 cups of water. You bring that to a boil. Then you take your 2 tablespoons of the turmeric powder. You add it to that hot boiling water. You cover it, turn down the heat, let it simmer for 15 minutes. Then you switch off the stove and you leave it covered and drawing it out for as long as 4 hours. By then it is cooled, and you will strain and bottle it up and drink it during the day, in between your meals as you would drink water. You drink mouthfuls at a time so that your cells will absorb it.
So are you saying that is good for the cancer?
It's good for the cancer, for shrinking the cancer growth, the tumors. It's good for women with fibroids, for shrinking their tumors, for prostate enlargement. It's good for that, to reduce prostate inflammation, to reduce for prostate cancer, as well as to reduce inflammation in the body for arthritis. We can use the turmeric for that. Inflammation anywhere in the body, as a matter of fact, because the herbs, when you take the herbs in your body, it's not selective. So you're not saying, well, I have a little arthritis here, I'm taking turmeric for that arthritis. Anywhere in the body that has inflammation, it will address it. And so it's holistic. God has made it so that it would address anywhere. If it's inflammation in the brain, in the eye, it will address it too. Yes.
Yeah. My question is, as a vegetarian or a vegan, how do you get vitamin B12?
Oh, excellent question. How do we get vitamin B12? Okay. Okay, for vitamin B12, so because the question started off that he presumes that I'm vegan, all mankind can make vitamin B12. It's not only found in the animals, the creatures, but we have animal-like cells. We don't have plant cells. So we too, within that kingdom, we can make vitamin B12. And we don't need to rely on getting it secondhand. B12 is a bacteria. It's created in our gut. And so at nighttime, while you're resting, the body says, okay, let me produce the B12. And it comes up your tract, and it's there in your mouth. In the morning, it's there in your mouth. And what you do, you drink water. First thing in the morning, it recycles, and you can have B12. We can make it. God has made the body in such a way that it can make. However, we can also destroy our B12 and then be lacking in it. When we create any fermentation within our body system, you create such, you will be B12 deficient. Let me explain. If you eat and drink at the same time, if you eat and you go and lie down, you create inflammation. Food begins to sour in the gut, in your stomach, further down in your gut lining, in your small intestines. It's going to affect the production of B12. If you were to take alcohol, it's going to affect it. If you were to take Listerine and wash your mouth, that kills 99.99% germs. B12 is a bacteria. It kills bacteria. It's going to affect and kill your B12. You're not going to get it. And so if you follow the way we've been teaching, spacing out your meals, not eating and drinking, don't eat and go lie down, not to use apple cider vinegar, you're not using the ketchup and the condiments and the spices and so forth that influences and put different chemical substance within the body, then you would be able to make B12 adequately without falling short. So it's all there for the taking as long as we treat our bodies well.
Is that information into the 365?
Yes. And for those of our students, you actually have a whole slide presentation pack on B12. Okay, so there are natural killer cells that helps the body. If you get adequate amount of sunshine, that can help to kill the cancer cells. A good vegetarian diet, selenium-rich food, so using Brazil nuts 3 a day, getting omega-3 fatty acid in your flaxseed. Exercise is a natural chemotherapy agent, and so as you exercise, if you're not going for chemotherapy, but you're doing your walking, it will help you. Getting deep sleep, so going to bed, getting lots of sleep. We tell individuals with cancer, go to sleep by 8 o'clock. The more rest you get, the better it would help in producing melatonin, which is an antioxidant, and it would help to fight cancer. Garlic, use lots of garlic every day. Okay, so roughly, by and large, that was the overview on cancers, and then it can get specific into various forms and would require, some specific highlighted treatments. Has the information been helpful to you thus far? This is the last health lecture in the series. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for taking and being serious about your health and even that of your friends and your relatives, because you brought them, you extended invitations. And the information that the Lord has shared with you, if you put it into practice, then you would be able to be that living testimony that the Lord would just allow you to be used to share his message to everyone with whom they can come in contact with.